Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to show you guys exactly how to get a 5 on your AP Drawing portfolio. Hi, my name is Cameron and this video is a little overdue because I am now in college, but I wanted to show you guys my AP Drawing portfolio that I did as a senior in high school last year and how I got a 5. I'm going to divide this video into 4 sections. First, I'm going to talk about the 15 sustained investigation pieces and then the 2 written evidence that go along with that. And then I'll talk to you guys about my 5 finished works as well as give you guys some tips and tricks for your portfolios. When you're writing your process for your sustained investigation, you need to show that you experimented and that you revised in that short amount of characters. This is the first image I did, and as you can see, I created a reference photo, I sketched out my idea, and I even started my finished work. For this I said, with my reference, I created a sketch, then I experimented with sea life, hair, and floating supplies. Just in that short sentence, I explained to you that I created a reference, I created a sketch, and that I experimented with different objects. This is my second image. As you can see at the top here, it's kind of boring, there's not much going on. And then at the bottom, I changed it by adding more colors, more sea life, even more schoolwork to it. And then I said for my process that I experimented by adding variations of school supplies and revising the colors to look underwater. This is just a small version of what I did, but in this sentence, it shows that I experimented and that I revised, which is really good. This is my third image, and this is actually an idea that I eventually discarded. I didn't like it anymore, and that's exactly what the College Board wants to see. They want to see your process. Where did you start? How did your idea evolve? So that's why I included this one. As you can see, I took some reference photos of me looking pretty frustrated doing homework, and then I collaged my faces together, and then I even started a finished product of this, and you can see some of my sketches at the end. For this one I said, I experimented with Photoshop, editing my reference to show a distressed student. This was a very simple caption, but it shows that I made reference photos, I experimented, I sketched, I even used Photoshop. This shows that I spent a lot of time on this and this idea. This piece was a process. I did not like it at the beginning, I did not like it at the end, but as you can see, I kept changing it and changing it to make me like it more, make it fit my idea more, but I still never loved it, so I didn't include it in my finished works, but it was definitely an experiment to play around with this. For my process, I said that I kept revising my piece. I went from types of distractions to not being able to focus during a test. So if you guys have pieces that maybe you started but you didn't complete, put those in your sustained investigation. The College Board would love to see those. Image number 5. I love this piece. This is my favorite piece I created. I made these reference photos in my study hall in the cafeteria. People were looking at me. I did not care. I had an idea. I wanted to do it. So I took 4 pictures of me and I put them in a collage together to show a time lapse. And then I sketched out my idea as well as I sketched out a colored version. For the process, I said, with my variation of references, I sketched and experimented with gesture and being in water. This is a good caption because it shows that I made my own reference photo and I also experimented with drawing human figure, which can be really hard. Image number 6. So as you can see at the beginning here, I'm holding my books and I'm starting to drop them because they're getting so heavy with all the schoolwork. And then I realized that's not really what I want to do. I want to show me prioritizing school over my mental health. So as you can see, I'm starting to hold the books above my head and starting to drown in all the water. I know, very dark, I'm sorry. So for this process, I said I revised my final to instead show the student prioritizing school over their mental health. This description shows that I revised my idea a lot. Image number 7. The top here, you can see that I started to finish my finished work, but it looked kind of boring to me. I feel like it needed something. So I decided to add some sea life to it, so that's where I got my final piece. For this, I said I finished developing by lighting colors and then adding sea life to make the effect complete. This description is good because it shows that even when I thought I was done, I kept developing it to make it even more. For some reason, a fishbowl stuck out to me. I really wanted to do something with me being in a fishbowl, but I didn't really know what to do with that. I kept thinking, like, what if I did me as like a betta fish, but I don't know, that idea was very hard. So as you can see in this one, I had an idea, I started to start my final, and then I was not happy with it, and then my idea completely changed. This shows a lot of revision. For my process, I said I revised my idea of being confined in a fishbowl to instead show me in class completely submerged. This was just an idea change, so it's really good to include those in your sustained investigation. Image number 9. I took that fishbowl idea and I changed it to doing a student struggling with a test. This was a very big change, and you can see that I created a new reference photo and I sketched out some new ideas. This one I said that from sketching, I experimented with images that symbolize the pressure of time test taking. This description I actually do not love that much, but it does show that I sketched and I experimented and I tried to show something different than the fishbowl. Image number 10. This shows my finished work for that time test taking idea. This image was kind of hard to express at first because when I first did it, it just looked like a frustrated student doing something underwater at a desk. So I revised it by adding some clocks and I added an oxygen tank. For my process, I said that I revised by adding floating oxygen tanks and clocks to show being under timed pressure. This really shows that I revised and I experimented and I changed my idea. Then for image 11, I took that image and did it even further and I started to make it look more underwater. Even added Scantron bubbles because I wanted to show that test-taking feeling. So I said for my process here that I kept developing by adding water reflections, Scantron bubbles, and experimenting with color. This shows that I was done, but I just kept adding more and more to make a bigger effect. Image 12. I know I really wanted to incorporate something with my book bag because I kept having a theme of my book bag in these finished works, but I wanted to show just my book bag. So I started to experiment with drawing and sketching out my book bag, and then I was thinking, how could I make this look underwater? And for my process, I said that I experimented with zooming in on school supplies and sketched to incorporate my underwater theme. This shows that I just sketched and I experimented. Image 13, this is when my finished work started to come to life. So at first I just drew my school supplies underwater, but it looked kind of boring to me. It needed some more stuff. So then I revised it by adding some fish floating around and really just developing the school supplies to look really realistic. In my process, I said that I developed underwater colors in the school supplies and kept revising by adding sea life. This was a simple description, but it showed that I revised and I experimented. Image 14, this is when my ideas started to really come to life, I guess. It was kind of hard to keep thinking of underwater things, so for image 14, I wanted to do something different. So I thought, what if I fell into the whirlpool? Because that's how all this schoolwork feels to me. So for this, I captured a reference photo of me in my bedroom trying to fall. I had to set up my tripod to do this one. And then I started sketching out some positions in my sketchbook of me falling into a whirlpool. For this process, I said, I practiced with gesture when making my reference, then experimented with how to show a whirlpool. This is a good description. It shows that I practiced with gesture and I experimented and I was sketching over and over. Last image, image 15, this shows my finished work and how it really came to life. First you can see it's just me falling into a whirlpool, and then I tried to think, what could I add to this? Like, what else could be falling into a whirlpool? So I added loads and loads of schoolwork. So for my process, I said, I revised by adding more kinds of schoolwork to add to the effect of drowning in work. This was a good description because it shows that I revised and I just kept changing my idea to make the effect even bigger. So those are all of my sustained investigation pieces, and now I'm going to show you guys my written evidence for those. Sorry, I'm reading off my phone, but I'm going to put them right here for you guys. The first question I got asked was, identify the inquiry that guided your sustained investigation. For this, you have to be very specific, but yet again, you also get a limited of characters, so try not to write too much, but try to have a lot in one sentence. So for this, I said, I considered how can I show being stressed with school, ? I related the pressure I feel with school with how I feel holding my breath underwater. I was suffocating in AP courses, advanced math, chemistry with no breaks, my junior year. I went home to hours of schoolwork and studying every day. I felt like I was drowning in schoolwork. My grades were plummeting into the deep end. This difficult year made me want to express how I felt with the stress my overachieving self faced in school. This idea exploration, driven by my inquiry, led to my overall theme of drowning in the stress of school. So, how did I develop this? I developed this by thinking, how could I make the viewer understand why I made these pieces? So I try to talk a little bit about myself and why I created these, and then I also try to use some underwater vocabulary to really sell the idea of being underwater. So that was what I did for that question. Now for question number 2, which is describe ways your sustained investigation developed through practice, experimentation, and revision. For this I said, I brainstormed ways I could show being stressed and overwhelmed with school. Using water and the ocean as a metaphor, I considered the way water can show distress and feeling under pressure. I thought of other ways I could show drowning in school. After contemplating, I began sketching my ideas and using my iPhone to create reference photos of my school supplies and my gesture. I experimented with creating fish imagery and underwater worlds. This led to me revising and developing new ideas throughout my pieces. I said a lot in that, but I really just wanted to show the readers that I started with just the stress of school and how I revised that to create the metaphor of drowning in the stress of schoolwork by creating all these underwater pieces. Now it's time for the best part, my 5 finished works. This is my first piece. This one is called Drowning, and it shows me in my room drowning in loads and loads of schoolwork. I really like this one. I like how much detail I put into it, and it's actually the first piece I did trying to capture this underwater theme. For this one, for the idea, I said a student is completely submerged underwater, drowning in the stress and pressure of school. And then for the process, I said that I practiced rendering underwater imagery. I experimented with how water and light affect color. Work number 2, this is definitely my favorite piece. I think it's my strongest piece, and it is called The Deep End. The Deep End shows schoolwork getting heavier and heavier till I'm drowning in it. This picture has so much meaning, and it was very hard to express that in these small captions, but here's what I said. For the idea, I said, the school day starts off light until the stress piles up, pushing you into the deep end. And then for my process, I said, I use a variation of reference photos to create a sequence of actions throughout the school day. I don't love my captions for this. I really wish I talked about prioritizing school over my mental health, but I did talk about that in my sustained investigation. This is work number 3. This one is called Timed. Timed is a piece where I show the pressure of taking a timed test. This piece has a lot of detail, and a lot of people love this piece. It's actually not my favorite, but I think the meaning behind it is pretty good. For this one, for my idea, I said, as the time ticks during the test, the student overthinks, drowning in their answers and the pressure. And then for the process, I said, I associated drowning with the overwhelming pressure and feeling of running out of time or oxygen. So this piece really just shows how hard time tests can be for some students. I think the Scantron bubbles were definitely a risky thing to add because I think some people can understand the Scantron bubbles I put in here, but other people might not understand them. But overall, I think this is a pretty good piece. Okay, work number 4. This piece, probably my prettiest piece. It is my green book bag. Underwater, it was so filled with schoolwork that it floated to the bottom of the ocean and is now just sitting there overfilled. I really like this piece. It's very unique, and I love how I added sea life around it. I think it really gives that underwater effect. For this one, I said, for my idea, throughout the school year, the workload becomes so heavy, causing the book bag to overflow and sink. And then for the process, I said, I use images of my own book bag. Then I created an underwater setting to use a metaphor. I like this piece. It's very simple, but it really shows a deep meaning of underwater schoolwork and how I just had so much schoolwork and my book bag was so heavy that it sunk to the bottom. And for my last piece, it is called Mid-Year Fall. This piece shows how the school year starts off good, and then when you get to that middle area of the school year, you start to slack a little bit, and the workload just becomes too much that you fall into a whirlpool, basically. For this piece, for the idea, I said halfway through the school year is when students become unorganized and grades start to fall off. And then for the process, I said I painted schoolwork and a student falling into a whirlpool to represent averages plummeting down. I really like this piece. I think it's very unique, and I like how I used my own reference photo of me just falling. And then when I did the schoolwork, I actually did them very freehand. I didn't even look up reference photos because I wanted to capture that like unorganized falling effect, so the schoolwork didn't really have to be very detailed. So I really like how original this piece is. I think it's pretty good. The first tip I have is that when you're doing your sustained investigation, you can actually put your finished works into that. A lot of people I think don't know this, and my art teacher actually told me about this. So what I did was, instead of just putting it actually in there, I showed my beginning and my end stage, and then I put that into a collage and I uploaded that as an image. And I think this looked really good and really showed how I revised my piece. The second trick I have is that when you're uploading sketches into your sustained investigation, you can actually write onto your sketches, because sometimes I know you might not be able to write enough in your captions. So just write it on your sketch and the College Board would read it off that. The next trick I have is that when you're organizing your sustained investigation, I think it looks really nice if you do little collages as one image, instead of just uploading one image on each section. I think it looks a little more professional to have a few on one. And then the last tip I have is for your finished works. I think that your overall theme should be something unique, but then take it even further, make it even more unique. And I think that will really help you guys and make you stick out to the College Board a lot. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps you with your guys' portfolios. If you liked it, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Bye!